Good evening. The time is 1 minute past 7, and we are back live with the book club. And today we have a very special guest, Miss Ingrid Nayame. She is our first Zambian author ever on the book club so far. So we are super, super excited tonight, and we just cannot wait to hear everything that she's got to share with us. Welcome, Ingrid. How are you?
And I'm happy to be here, and thank you for having me.
Great, awesome. We're happy to have you here. If any of you are watching us on Facebook or YouTube, please let us know where you're watching from in the comments, and please let us know any Zambian authors you've read. I bet you after tonight, you're going to have a Zambian author you definitely want to read. So as is my custom, I always start every live with a quote. And tonight's quote, after I've read one of Ingrid's books, she's written 3, I think captures my sense of her stories, her characters, and it is a quote by Dinor Mengetsu. Dinor Mengetsu is the author of The Beautiful Things That Heaven Bears. And the quote is this: "There is nothing more restless than men in power." And if you are curious as to how that applies to Ingrid's body of work, you need to get onto Amazon and you need to buy any one of her 3 books. Ingrid writes extensively from a male perspective, which was very new for me to hear from an African author, an African female author. And we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. So a little bit more about Ingrid. Ingrid is a Zambian novelist, self-published author of 3 books, which are both available in Kindle and paperback on demand on Amazon. The first book, The Last Laugh, was printed in 2017, nominated in the author category of the Standard Bank sponsored 2017 Zambian Woman of the Year Award. After that, she then printed and published The Colored Vine, which was nominated in the same category. That's the Standard Bank sponsored 2018 Zambian Woman of the Year Award. And this time she scooped the award for The Colored Vine. And then she proceeded with a double nomination in the University of Zambia, UNZA Radio's 2018 Tell Your Own Story, both in the Fiction of the Year category and Best Fiction. And she was awarded for the Best Fiction category. She was then in residence at Rhodes University from the 3rd of September to the 30th of November in the English department under the Urban Connections and African Popular Imaginaries project. Since then, she was awarded the 2019 Mwape Peer Awards, an initiative of James Mwape, a Zambian living in the United States. She was also one of the Zambian women writers to attend the 2019 African Women Writers Workshop in Accra, Ghana, from October 20 to October 30. Ingrid and 9 other Zambian writers run the Myambo Writers Cooperative, which is a collaboration of fiction writers seeking to improve the literary industry in Zambia. And this was formed in January 29. She's also the 2020 African Writers Trust Fellow. So those are many, many, many accolades to give us a little bit of understanding of the depth of who we have on the live with us tonight. So Ingrid, tell us a little bit about how your journey began. What prompted you to write The Last Laugh, the first of the 3 books that you've done so far?
What prompted me to write The Last Laugh was because the first thing was I wanted to write this story. It was begging me to write it. The idea came in 2014. I was working somewhere part-time, and I remember I used this was a diary for my work where I was working. So this is where the ideas about The Last Laugh were penned. Whenever I knock off from work or I'm in the office and I'm trying to, trying to relax, I would start writing ideas of The Last Laugh. After that, I I decided to leave it for a while because I didn't know how I was going to publish, because my publishing journey started a long time ago, and because there was no information of how I was going to publish, and it was kind of difficult because we don't have publishers in Zambia, and I didn't know about self-publishing, and it took me a while to get the information, to ask people around, and unfortunately, people I was asking wrote motivational books or business books, and they were discouraging me. They wanted me to write something to do with business, or a motivational book or an inspiration book. But I was interested in writing fiction, and clearly in Zambia, very few people do creative writing. They are there, but very few have published. And this is because they need money to publish, and being a self-published author means you need to foot all your bills. So The Last Laugh came about because I was just interested in how we treat certain individuals in our society, like how the pastor must behave, or the bishop, or the married woman, or the married man. There's this level of respect in our society when people have got titles, forgetting that they are only human and they can do so many bad things, but remain, the titles cover them up to not to, expose their weaknesses. So that's how The Last Laugh came about. And when I was writing it was a very challenging book to write. Living in Zambia as a Christian nation, and because people would feel like I didn't know how it was going to be received by the readers, because I had this fear of people thinking that I was bashing men of God, or trying to put them to paint them black. But at last I wrote it, and I told myself, I told myself, let me just write it and see how people are going to receive it. But after that, I didn't expect a lot of good reviews. And when people started, sending me messages, how they felt after reading The Last Laugh, I felt good. I felt motivated to write more.
Definitely. I mean, I can imagine how captivated people must have been to read The Last Laugh. For those of you who are curious about what The Last Laugh is about, the synopsis, or rather the blurb, is very mysterious, and I think that Ingrid did that on purpose. Human emotions are stretched to the breaking point in this tale of deceit, love triangles, murder, and secrets. It's a fierce race of who will have the last laugh. Is it the bishop of a thriving Pentecostal church trying to protect his reputation and the church he built? Is it the scorned wife who ends up keeping a secret that would haunt her for life? Is it the husband who cheated on his wife and pays a huge price for what he did? Or is it the pastor looking for answers beyond the shocking secret of his wife's murder? Only one person is determined to defy all odds in the cold face of regret, betrayal, pain, agony, and anger in order to move on with a clear conscience. So I've been reading a little bit of The Last Laugh in preparation for this. And I must say that that very mysterious blurb is actually right on point for all of the suspense, because straight from the prologue, it's a shocker. And you open up this story with like a whopper of a revelation. I found myself sort of like shrinking back, thinking, am I going to be ready to do this? But I know that one of the reasons why you wrote that story was you were reflecting on the time around the failures of role models in society. And I think pretty much every person you would look up to in this book is flawed. And because you show us what's happening in their inner life and in their thoughts, and you show us the reactions that they have: guilt, shame, anger, jealousy, rage. We see these people not in the way that we're used to or taught to see them. Can you tell me a little bit about, or tell our viewers a little bit about what you wanted to unpack about the failures of these role models in society? What was the biggest story you wanted to share? Because I mean, if you read the book, you'll know that it's not about bashing the church. It's not about making pastors look bad. I mean, it's good old-fashioned intrigue, very creatively written. But what was the bigger lesson for us there from that story?
The funny part is when I was writing the last laugh, I didn't write it to teach people a lesson. First of all, I was just happy to create the characters. They made the story flow, and I was very happy to be in their presence, and they stayed with me for close to 3 years, talking to me. So when I was creating the characters, I was just creating them for entertainment. If people got any lesson in the last laugh, or from relating with any of the characters, it came as a surprise. I remember one of the readers who bought my book, she wrote me a testimony, or she told me I was married, and my husband was like Gerard, the character in your book, and this is what happened to me. So it took me by surprise, because I didn't expect readers to start relating with the characters we are reading in the last laugh. So whenever I write a book or a story, it's not because I want to teach someone a lesson. I just feel like writing, okay, I love this story, let me write it and put it out there, and people read it and enjoy it. So whenever people feel like they've learned a lesson from it, I feel happy, and I feel motivated to to do more, to to write more, and to create characters which are interesting, and which readers can relate with. So most of the time when I'm writing, I don't write to to bring out a lesson from the story. It's just for entertainment. But if readers get a lesson from it or relate with any of the characters, that's good for me, and that's good for them.
Yeah, definitely. I do think one of the reasons why, for me, I see the lessons, and why I think that there was a bigger lesson there, is because the stories are so relatable. And so you put very human faces on people that we've stopped seeing as people for a long time in African society, especially when I look at the pastor in the book, someone, we don't typically see those people as human beings with vices. But I wouldn't even say vices, just normal, natural flaws and weaknesses like the rest of us. So I do feel like, in a sense, what happened with The Last Laugh is that you also just put voice to maybe things we think of secretly and silently, but would never dare to say in, what is considered the right sort of company. Yet it's actually very real, and it's actually really the true heart of, how people see each other and how people are relating to each other. So relatable definitely would be one of the words. And I think when you feel like you're relating to something, you have a different conversation with the piece of work than the author does. Like, you wrote the characters with your own motivation, but I think people received them from their own experiences, people who've had to deal with infidelity. And also, I think people of a certain generation, because when I look at Gerard and I look at Martha, and I also look at John, this is people of a particular generation. When we were first introduced to them, they're mature people. And so when we're hearing what is going on between them and how long it's been going on between them, we're a little bit like, but you guys are supposed to be the parents or the elders. So very, 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 very powerful, very, very interesting. Something that struck me, though, is that for you, this journey was a self-publishing journey. There wasn't that much support for literary work in Zambia. A lot of the publishing in Africa, or self-publishing in Africa, is around motivational books, business books, Christian literature. And here you come out and you say, I'm going to do fiction, which is a really tough genre, because fiction books are always double the size of nonfiction books, and they're always harder to edit. There's always more detail because you're creating a world, you're creating characters, you're driving them with motivations. And then straight out the bat, your first book, you get nominated for a prize. What was that like?
It was surreal, and I couldn't believe it when I got the nomination. And because the first time, the time I thought of self-publishing the book, I told myself I'll just sell maybe 3 or 4 copies, one to, to a close friend of mine who's been telling me you should write a book, and maybe the other 2 copies to, close family members. But my writing career has come up with so many surprises, such that sometimes I even ask myself, is this real? Is this happening? Was this journey, written before I even knew that these things were going to happen? So when I get in fact, it was a message through a messenger on Facebook that came through, and they told me that they are going to nominate me for Zambia Women Awards in the author category. And when I told my family, they were excited, and I was also excited, but deep down my heart, I was telling me, is this real? Is this happening? I never expected such things to happen to me. I just wanted to write and, put my story out there. Now the nominations and all of a sudden, people started calling me. They wanted me to do interviews. They wanted me to appear on radio and so on and so forth. So it was kind of it's, what can I say? I was surprised and I was happy at the same time. But like many things in life, I'm sure this was meant to be. Maybe that's why I even wrote The Last Laugh, and this book was beginning for this long journey of being a writer. So yeah, it came as a surprise to me.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, but a pleasant surprise, because I think a lot of people who dream about writing and publishing a book always wanted to be recognized. I mean, that's usually the one of the secret hopes that every writer has, is that people would recognize and appreciate the work that has gone into it. And it took you from 2014, I understand, until 2016 to finish writing The Last Laugh, correct?
finished writing the book in, I think 2015. Yeah, 2015. So from 2015 to 2016, the book was, undergoing a lot of editing and, the back and forth of the manuscript from various people who were reading through the book. So, yeah, by the time it was 2017, I think it was between January or February, that's when I decided now to, publish.
Wow, 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 wow. I mean, I cannot imagine working on something for that long and go through all of that period of time. But well done to you. I mean, it's definitely a very entertaining book, and it's definitely a message that makes us think. So we've got some people who've joined us from Facebook. We've got Nelly Mwanza watching all the way from, I think that's a Zambian flag. And she's got two smiley faces for us. Thank you so much, Nelly. Thank you for joining the live, and we're looking forward to what you have to say going later. Anyone else who's watching, I see that we do have some people with us. Don't feel shy. Please say hi. Share your love with Ingrid and let us know if you have read any novels or any books by Zambian authors. And if you've got a question for Ingrid, please feel free to share it, whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook. Sorry, Nelly is actually watching us from YouTube. So it's a pleasure to have you with us. Okay, so we've got two more books to get through. So then you went straight after publishing The Last Laugh. You already were on your way to printing and publishing The Colored Vine. And The Colored Vine also has similar themes around family, love, human relationships. But here you're talking about mixed race. And where you start us off in the story is in a very typically African place, in a very colonialist sort of backdrop or setting. We've got the issues between black and white. We've got the issues between missionaries and what that looked like in terms of black-white relations. And I'm like, wow, what is going on there? So you went a completely different direction with this book. And you were also writing from the male perspective, which I really kudos, because you must have to do so much research to make that voice come through authentic. But then you're also writing from a mixed race perspective, which also requires quite a lot of research to make that sound authentic. What was driving you to come up with The Colored Vine?
The Colored Vine it came out as it was an inspirational story of someone I knew, someone I grew up with, who was mixed race. And we were having a conversation, and he said something about being mixed race, and so many things I put in that book were conversations I've had with him, growing up as a mixed race, even though he came from a privileged background compared to my character. So sometimes, many times in Zambia, not sometimes, many times in Zambia, we tell ourselves we are not racists, but in Quito, where I grew up, there were mixed race people who decided to live in a certain place they called colored compound, because they were a minority group and they felt that they couldn't mix with others because of the things people used to say about them. So they decided to live, to find a place where they can relate with themselves rather than living in other communities. So when I wrote The Colored Vine, it came from a background where I discovered that many missionaries who came to Zambia in the 1800s left mixed race children. And I had to do a bit of research here and there, using so many books written by people who traveled with these white fathers. So that's why I got a lot of information of how they lived when they, arrived in northern part of Zambia, because that's where they set so many missionaries there, which are now parishes. So it started from a conversation with a mixed race friend, and then I decided to to add more information about how light skinned people came about, or mixed race people came about in Zambia. So, and that's how I came up with the story, The Colored Vine, which had a totally different um, different title when I started writing it. I just changed it at the last minute because the title didn't fit the story which I was writing. So that's how it started. Actually, before I wrote The Last Laugh, The Colored Vine was the first book idea which came about in 2013. But because I didn't have so much information, and the character I wanted to create didn't wasn't well developed, I decided to abandon it and concentrated on writing The Last Laugh. So when The Last Laugh was undergoing editing, that's when I started writing The Last Laugh, like collecting all the information I had on the book, and started writing the book. And again, it's another book which I just wrote without any, without thinking that it's going to have any impact on people of mixed race in Zambia. Many of them bought the book. They wanted to again relate with the character, and again, it was a surprise. And because of the way the character came out, and the way the story was, the way the story was written, it made them realize that they are human, they are capable of doing better things like anyone else, and they are part of us. So there was no need of feeling like they are not part of Zambian people.
Definitely. And I think because you start the story like two generations ahead of the main character, you really, it goes such a long way to show us that actually this group in society is legitimately, authentically African, and is embedded in our history and our heritage and our culture. One of the themes that struck me about the story was also the pattern of absentee fathers or fatherlessness. What did you find interesting about that in terms of putting it down on paper? What drove you to explore that theme?
Well, many people underestimate the presence of fathers in their children's lives. People think it's okay, a child can grow up with an aunt or a mother or grandmother or whoever, as long as they are being provided for. But a father figure in every child is a way of building the child's character, and knowing that they are in the safe hands, and they even if the father is not providing a lot of material things, just the presence of the father being around, it gives the child something to believe in. And just hearing the father being around and talking to them, and telling them what to do, helping them navigate the life, it's it gives them the morale and, you know, the confidence and, you know, the just feeling that they've got a parent or both parents around to who are there for them. But um, society sometimes downgrade the presence of a father in a child's life and think, you know, the mother is around, or the grandmother is around, or the aunt is around, so they'll do whatever they can to raise this child. But at the end of the day, the child also needs the father to be there for them, even if they are not giving them material things, but just their presence is so important for them to, you know, to to have a sense of security and confidence, and knowing that there's someone who's there to, you know, to give them life lessons and help them, you know, move in life from one stage to another. So with my character, he, even though he went ahead and uh, became a success in life, he always looked forward to a man who was going to, you know, tell him that he's doing a good job, you know, giving him a pat on the shoulder to tell him that he, you know, he's doing so well for himself, and, you know, just a man to be there for him and talk to him and, you know, tell him about life and how to, you know, to live in life. But despite being, you know, having the aunt and the grandparents in his life, and the stepfather was abusive, he still felt that the father's presence was more important, because many of the people, even if they are there for you in your life, they won't take the place of your father or your mother. So both parents are important in someone's life, to help them, you know, be the best people they can be in life.
Definitely. And it's interesting that you noted the yearning that Chisala has for his dad throughout his life, despite having, you know, support from other areas and actually and making it through, also despite also kind of being seen as like a subculture or second-class citizen, you know, among people of his own society. And then, but there's also an element where some of the fathers, his dad, Richard's dad, had a longing for him all of his life. And, you know, not wanting to give too much away, but there's also a longing from the father side as well. And so just as much as the son needs the dad also needs the relationship with the son. And that came that also came through in the story and in the narrative. Just to welcome some more people that have joined the live. Tatenda Tom on Facebook. I love how she relates her stories to what we all face as Africans. Great job. Can't wait to read one of your books. Thank you, Tatenda, for joining us. Norman on YouTube saying hi from Zimbabwe. Thank you for joining us. Max Manika from Facebook, greeting us from the USA. Thank you very much. Thanks, guys, for joining us, and thanks, guys, for putting your comments in the box. Whatever time you catch up with this live, and if you're watching, please don't be shy. Say hi. If you've got a question for Ingrid, let us know. And if you've read any authors from Zambia, please also let us know. And if you're curious or want to read in Ingrid's books, which are acclaimed and renowned, we have been talking about The Last Laugh, which is the first book that was printed in 2017. We've just been talking about The Colored Vine, which followed very soon after The Last Laugh, and it actually won a prize, the Standard Bank author category for Zambian Woman of the Year. The first book was a runner-up in that category, but Colored Vine got the Scoop the award that year. And now, because we're running a little bit out of time, there's a lot more to unpack in The Colored Vine. So you guys better read that book. Let's just quickly talk about your latest release, released just as we were sort of getting into the whole COVID thing, Cupid's Arrow. So Cupid's Arrow is a story about a lady called Sarah Ndlovu. She's got her life mapped out for her, but things don't go as planned. Like, she's sort of like, nobody told me life was going to be like this. She's got a really mundane relationship with her boyfriend, Joe, and they've been going out for a long, long time, but he's, the type who's not ready to settle down. She's under pressure to get married, a typical story of, the African woman, like, what's going on, your sell-by date. And in the midst of all of this, she meets Joe Ndalama, a widower, who's much older than her and who is also reluctant to start a new relationship. They start off as friends and they begin a new discovery of what love and companionship is about. And is the meeting coincidence? What happens next? So you have us on the edge of our seats here, Ingrid. Tell us a little bit about Cupid's Carol. Cupid's
Okay. Cupid's Arrow, again, it's one of the books I started writing before I wrote The Last Laugh and The Colored Vine. Like, so many stories which come my way, which I really want to write, and then they are not, there's no inspiration, or the characters are not, well developed. I usually abandon them and then, go back to the story after some time. So when I wrote Cupid's Arrow, it was inspired by someone's story I heard a long time ago, who was, in fact, it was a man who was a teenage father. And then that story, instead of, and that person inspired the character of Joseph Ndalama. But instead of writing about Joseph Ndalama being a teenage parent and so on and so forth, I decided to, to bring in Sarah as a main character, and, and for Sarah, it's all about, finding love, getting married, have children, grow old with the love of your life. But life doesn't happen like that. I wish it could. Maybe to some it does, but for Sarah, it was totally different. She discovered that in life is not a straight line. You sometimes you need to climb mountains. You need to go through the valleys. You need to pass through the desert and so on and so forth. Even though her life wasn't that bad, she because of the pressure from families and friends and everyone else around her, they really wanted her to get married. Just like any girl child who's born in a Zambian home, they don't look at you as a career woman. They want you to get married, have children, and live happily ever after. But marriage is not for everyone. And because it's not for everyone, many young women have been forced into marriage because they think, okay, let me just get married so that society can respect me. You find that even in the book, Sarah was being treated differently when the young sister got married. They thought, oh, okay, you don't deserve the respect, you because you are not married. Your sister is married, and she needs all the respect she can be given, because now she's got a home, and the husband, and she'll have children and so on and so forth. But for Sarah, she discovered that being single and being single and being pressured into marriage became difficult for her to handle. And then she was in this relationship where a man is not ready to marry her. And these are the other things we forget, that even men, Joe, who was a boyfriend, was just being honest with her. He wasn't ready to get married, but because she thought, no, if I stay longer in this relationship, maybe it's going to change his mind. Like I said, marriage is not for everyone. Joe wasn't the type who wanted to settle down. He made it clear to her he doesn't want to get married. He just wants to, to be in a relationship and, enjoy life. But you find that other men are forced into marriage and they become absentee husbands and eventually absentee fathers because they were not into that marriage in the first place. So with Sarah, she was even lucky enough to, to find herself realizing that she was wasting time with the person who wasn't, ready to be with her. And they had two different goals. They were in a relationship, but they had two different goals. He just wanted to be in a relationship and enjoy life and, build his career. Sarah was looking forward to, to have a ring on her finger and, be a wife and a mother later on in life. So it's a yearning for many young women in our society. They want to get married. They want to, with the coming of social media, they want to upload photos on social media so that we congratulate them, even though they are not even happy with the choice of a man they are marrying. So when I wrote this book, it came from that background where I saw a lot of young women, being like forced in inverted commas into marriages they were not happy, and maybe even settling down with men who are not even interested in the marriages. So again, when I'm writing, I don't teach people lessons from my stories. I just want to write and tell a story. And for me, Cupid's Arrow, it's a love story, because it was my attempt to write a love story which people would enjoy and feel happy. And these are the stories which are rarely written by many Zambian creatives. So for me, it was a very it was a story which made me happy to write, and I fell in love with the characters. They also changed the way I see love and relationships and friendships.
I just love the relationship that you have with your own work, because you use your observations about things that interest you, about the society you live in and what you're noticing and the conversations you're having, and then you let that become a story that also enchants you and captivates your imagination and also shows you something new. So I love that. I love that magic of creativity that you have there. So we are coming towards the end of our life, and we haven't really even scratched the surface on so many of the things that you could tell us. Just before you give us a reading, I have one last question for you, and that's now that you've self-published 3 books, we now see that you are now working with other fiction authors to bring more fiction and more creative writing to life in Zambia. Tell us a little bit about that, and what your hopes are about that initiative.
Miambo was an initiative of Luca Mwango. He unfortunately died in 2018, just after we launched it. We wanted to, like I said, there are very few Zambians who write creative stories or creative, who are into creative writing. So when we discovered that, we thought, okay, let's have a group called Miambo. It was a group by then. It wasn't registered. We just wanted, to brainstorm on storytelling, and maybe even publish an anthology every year. So when he came up with that initiative, he invited fellow writers, and I was one of them. We were 10 of us. We decided to do an anthology. By then, I was working on Cupid's Arrow, so I said I cannot contribute any story. And then they asked me if I can do an exempt from the Colored Vine. I said, okay, it's fine. So that's how my contribution was just an exempt from the Colored Vine. But other 9 writers contributed short stories, which are very interesting. And that's how we published our first anthology, Alone and Other Zambian Short Stories. So afterwards, we said, oh, okay, if we need this group to, to move forward and maybe even have funding later on, have events, invite other people to be part of us, we need to register it. That's how we registered it with the registrar of societies, and we became a cooperative in was it June or February of 2019, and by that time Luca was left us. He died, and we decided to honor him by saying we are not going to let this dream die. We are going to continue. We decided to invite another writer to continue this dream with us, 10 people, because the registrar of society says we need to be 10 of us. So that's how we decided to recruit another person and get the papers right, and we started thinking of writing another anthology. And then last year again we published another anthology, Sister Wives. This anthology has got a theme on child marriages, gender-based violence, and what else is there? I think child marriages and gender-based violence. So we've done 2 anthologies. Our dream is to to focus on promoting creative writing and publishing an anthology every other year, so that we invite more voices. What we do is it's just not the 10 of us who write the stories. We invite other people to contribute stories to us. They email us the stories. We do a call for submission. They do write stories to us. Then we select the best stories. We find an editor who helps us to edit the stories, and then we publish. So our aim is to promote creative writing and publish anthologies to give new voices a place where they can tell their stories.
Definitely. And it is so important, because as we've seen from your body of work, a lot of the stories you're telling are stories that aren't being told in the mainstream, and yet they're resonating and they're relatable to so many people's lives. So imagine if we gave room and created space for more people with different stories and different observations to share, what a richer conversation we would have. So we've gone slightly over our time for the book club tonight, but as is our custom, we cannot let you go, Ingrid, without at least reading us a little short excerpt from one of your books. So we've asked Ingrid to prepare a passage for us that she believes is something that African women need to hear tonight, and she's reading from one of her books. So Ingrid, please share which book you're reading, reading from, and take it away. Help us to close off an amazing conversation. Cupid's arrow, yay! Yes, good choice. I like that. Thank you. Yes.
She couldn't even tell whether she was happy cheating on him or she was doing it to cover her loneliness and humdrum she suffered in a marriage over the past 22 years. Their children were all grown up, and she realized after her daughter was born that she had missed out on a lot of things in her life. She was a wife and a mother at a young age. Before she knew it, she had given birth to 3 more children. 4 children. This wasn't the life she had envisioned for herself. She wanted to go to college or university and get a job. She wanted to date a few men before settling down. She still blamed her husband for what she felt he had destroyed her life. Her husband also withdrew from their marriage emotionally and stayed long hours in the office. She knew he was as lonely as she was, but he chose to bury himself in his work and traveled at every opportunity he got. He had his back towards her. He didn't want to see his face while he said what he did. She wasn't expecting it, and she knew he was using that as an excuse to let her go. I'm not doing this because I don't want my wife. I'm doing this because I don't want my wife to discover about us, he said quietly. This is not about your wife. It's about the wedding I'm planning for my husband and I. Look, I told you why we are doing this, and you don't have to make any excuses, she said as she tried to pull his arm to face her. I'm not making any excuses, Edith, he swept her aside. She was quiet for a while. She couldn't believe this was the end of the affair, however wrong it may be. She was in love with him. Their affair had lasted 5 years, and her marriage was dead as far as she was concerned. Her husband was absent both emotionally and physically. Even the wedding they were planning, despite being married for 22 years, was just a front for their children and their relatives. Having married young, this wedding meant so much to both of them. They never had a wedding. You know my history, Harold. I never had a wedding when I got married. I just want to know what it feels like wearing a wedding gown, exchanging vows, and having a wedding cake. Her words trailed off, fighting back tears. Harold turned to look at her. He felt sorry. His emotions welled up, but he knew he had to end this affair. It was becoming dangerous. Edith was married to a prominent man, and it would be a scandal if he got to find out. There were no secrets that stay hidden forever, especially in small towns. I think I'll end here.
What a place to end, Ingrid. Now we're all like, what happens? What happens next? And thank you so much for sharing that with us. And for any of you who are curious, that's actually quite close to the beginning of the book. So if you're wondering what happens to Harold and all of the rest of these people, you need to get your hands on a copy of these books. You can find The Last Laugh, The Colored Vine, and Cupid's Arrow all on Amazon.com. They all have Kindle versions that you can download immediately, and they also have paperback print-on-demand versions too, for those of you who can get them shipped to your door. So those books are waiting for you, with wonderful observations about love, life, people, human character, and the flaws that we have, but also seeing through those very universal themes, truths about our culture and our Africanness. So thank you very much, Ingrid Nayame, for joining us. And thank you, all of you, for watching and spending this time together with us on this chilly Wednesday evening. Ingrid, it has been a pleasure listening to you and learning from you. We wish you well on your journey, and we hope that one day you can come back and talk to us a little bit more about the work that you're doing. Thank you very much.
Having me. The pleasure was mine.
Thank you to everybody. We love you. See you next week again, right here, 7 p.m. We've got more guests waiting to share their stories with you. Good night.